would do a pen test playtime for you today. This is the book I will be using for February. It's so pretty. Look at those edges. It looks like a hard drive. Isn't it beautiful? This is the Nuuna notebook by brandbook.de in the fluid chrome medium. The large is quite a lot bigger. This is the medium, which is approximately A5. It's a little bit shorter than A5, not quite as wide. It is comparable to Moleskine large size, but it's not exactly the same. So this is my notebook. I've already done a review of the actual, unboxing of the actual notebook. Look at that, isn't it pretty? It's casting beautiful rainbow mirror shadows all around the room. I adore it. It's fantastic. The magpie in me is going, oh, shiny. So let's stop blinding you with that. What I thought I would do today is grab my random pen box here. This is the top drawer in my craft tidy where I just chuck all my pens that I don't use all the time. And I thought I would do a bit of a random pen test and see what the paper's like, because I've had loads of you asking. Now, I do have a bit of paper somewhere that tells me what the paper is in this one. Dot grid paper, 120 gram premium paper with edged colouring. Extra smooth, recycled leather and recycled paper, sketch and write on dots. It is comparable to, but not exactly the same as, the Leuchtturm paper, which is also a German brand. So it's not surprising that it's a very, very similar paper. It's a little bit heavier. It's more like the Piccadilly paper when you feel it, rather than the thinness of the Leuchtturm. It's in between the plain Leuchtturm and the sketchbook Leuchtturm. But it is far superior to the Moleskine, just in feel. Much, much nicer. And yet still not horribly thick. Thickness-wise, it's similar to the plain Midori. So, as always, I'm going to head to the back of my book. This is the first marks in this beautiful book. Oh, so pretty, so pretty. I get to play with this one tomorrow. Well, I get to play with it tonight, actually, because I'm going to set it up tonight ready for tomorrow, because I do my prep planning the night before. But in the meantime, let's do some pen tests. And what I like to do, there's a useless page at the back of every notebook where it is bonding the notebook to the cover. So you've got the cover, the notebook block, and this, what's it called? I think it's called a frontispiece or a fly page or something like that. It's got all sorts of different names. This kind of bonds the two together via this little bit here. So I never use this page for anything other than my pen tests, because if you write on this page, you've got a nice selection of pen tests, but if there's any bleed through or nastiness or anything like that, it's on this page where you're not really going to see it, because that page doesn't really fold open. Little tip for you there. So let's play. As you can see, it doesn't quite want to lie flat yet because it hasn't been used, but it's not going to take very long to get it to do that. So my first pen I'm going to choose is the one I write with on a regular basis. This is my Pilot P500 Extra Fine. I've recently discovered these. Those of you who've been with me for a while know that I absolutely adore G-Tech C4 because it's super, super fine. I love it. It's like a 0.01 nib or something ridiculous. It's a 0.38, writes 0.1. This is a 0.5, writes 0.2. So it's actually super fine, and in contrast to the G-Tech C4, this one, thank you Pilot, is waterproof. Finally, Pilot have brought out a waterproof pen. I love you. You have to wait for it to dry a little bit before you use it with things like watercolour. But otherwise it is a super fine, teeny tiny, non-smearing waterproof pen. So P500 Pilot, obviously it's in black. Let me just do a square and fill it in so we can see if Colouring with it causes bleed, because sometimes writing doesn't, but colouring does. Moment of truth. Little tiny bit of ghosting on the colouring, but look how much I coloured it. I mean, I've gone over that 2 or 3 times now, and it's still only a tiny bit of ghosting. It's barely visible, and you can't see the writing at all. So, regular pen that I normally write with, which doesn't normally bleed or anything anyway, seems to work fine. Let me try my Uniball pen, because this is the Uniball Signo and it's the retractable 207. It's a little bit too thick for me. I like the pen design, I like the way it writes, but it's a 0.7 nib, writes 0.5, which is too thick. I would prefer a 0.5, writes 0.3. But we will use this anyway. Also, I don't think this one is waterproof because it's a Signo. So, Uniball Signo. Oh, and also it skips a lot. I've got 3 of them and they all skip. 207. And this one does have a tendency to bleed. That's it, that's all that's on there. And it's waterproof as well. All of my pens are waterproof except the G-Tex and the Papermates. Moment of truth. No bleed on the writing. That is a good thing, because these pens on my other book that I was using for January bled, even though it's an ink book. It's a cartridge book for ink pen. Blocking, a bit more ghosting than on the Pilot. There's the Pilot after I did about 5 covers of that. That's the Pilot square, and that's the Uniball square after, well, maybe 2 or 3. I don't exactly know how many I did, but you can see that one ghosts a little bit more than that, but so far no bleed through. Let's try a good old ballpoint pen. Random Bic ballpoint. This one probably doesn't work properly yet. Oh, it does. So, Bic Fashion ballpoint. And the thing with ballpoints, smear test. Doesn't smear! I think if you coloured with it, you would have to wait for it to dry a little bit before you turned over and started writing on the opposite page. So that's 3, 4... Nothing, of course, because ballpoints don't tend to bleed. Let's try a Pilot Juice pen. This is the Pilot Juice 0.5 in Coffee Brown. Pilot Juice 0.5 Coffee Brown. Do a colour test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm trying to stick to 5. Yeah, pretty good. Comparable with the first Pilot, although these obviously are not waterproof. Tiny bit of ghosting if you colour with it. I am so impressed with this right now. Okay, let's try. This is a new one. I've just been sent by Lee. So this is a Tombow marker, watercolour. So let's colour with it. Give it a nice good heavy coating, and then let's colour and add water, because this is usually where it goes wrong. It doesn't really, especially with the Leuchtturm, you can't get it to smudge that well or watercolour that well. Let's have a look. Oh, colour's moving, colour's moving. Paper's not pilling. Very tiny little bit of pilling there. So you don't want to get it overly wet, but it's not buckling up, so that's good. Let's see what happened. So again, writing absolutely fine. A little bit more ghosting with all that colour than everything else, but I did go over it 3 times, and you wouldn't normally do that with a watercolour pen. And even with the watercolour, or the water added, there's only a tiny bit of bleed and a tiny bit of ghosting. And I did add quite a lot of water to it, enough to make it peel up. So I think if you were careful with this, you could use it just fine with watercolour media. I don't think I would have a problem with it any more than I normally do. That could be a problem. Need to make sure it dries. Can we blot that off? Let's have a look. Now you can lift it a little bit. Okay, so water-based media doesn't dry very fast on here. That could be because the paper is actually quite slick and smooth. It's not shiny, but it's very smooth. So that will have to be something I make a note of. Transfer if, close when, dry, which is, it's fairly obvious that that was going to happen, but it surprised me that it transferred so heavily, because usually I use books that dry pretty quickly. So since that's the case, let's just try some watercolour. So I will colour in as I normally would. I would normally add little bits of watercolour like this, maybe add a bit more paint afterwards in places, maybe go back in with a darker colour, but I'm not using any additional water. I'm just, oh, it blends out nicely, I like that. No show through, no bleed through, no buckling. Very nice. Very nice. I like it. So watercolour works fine, watercolour paint, but if you use a wet pen and then watercolour over it, that might be an issue. Let me try this now that this has dried. Let me try it with the dry pen, because the wet pen with the wet water over the top made a bit of a mess. Let's try wet pen or dry pen with water. It's not smudging as well, but it is smudging, but no bleed through. So there you go, that's the issue. If you get it too wet, a wet pen plus water is going to be too much. But you could use things like Inktense pencils, I'm pretty sure. Let me grab an Inktense pencil. So let's mark this one. Watercolour. Regular. That's how I regularly use my watercolours. So Inktense. Whoops, that's not how you spell Inktense, never mind. And I had 2 goes at it as well. So Inktense pencil. Just colouring. And just layering. Nice and smooth. Oh, this is going to be beautiful to use with paper pencil. Oh, colour pencils lie down on this so nicely. I'm in love with these notebooks. This is nice to use, and I do love my colour pencil. As long as I can use watercolour and colour pencil, I'm good. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Nice, nice, nice. Feels beautiful to colour on. It feels similar to the Moleskine sketchbook to colour on. That's how it feels. It doesn't go down the same, but it feels like that. That beautiful, smooth feeling that you get coming up through the pencil. Oh yeah, I like that. So smudge test. No smudging. That's good. Let's do a colour test with water. See how it blends down. Now in theory this should blend down like the watercolour, because it's dry then wet. So it's not a wet pen plus water, it's dry plus water. So it should be the same as watercolour. Oh yeah. Colours are not as vibrant as they normally are on watercolour paper, but they move fine. Lovely gradient. Not a problem. No bleed. And the same, very, very, very tiny amount of buckling just a little ripple. It's not really buckling, it's just a little bit of a ripple where one side of the paper's got wet and the other hasn't. But honestly, if that's going to bother you, then you need to be using watercolour paper anyway, because all paper's going to do that. What else shall we try? Let's try a gel pen. So this is a Uniball Signo, I believe. Metallic, yep. Uniball Signo 0.7 metallic. Because metallic ink and regular ink is not the same because of the mica powders in the metallic ink. So give it a good old colour in. I suspect this is not going to dry very fast, so I'm going to blot it. Quite a lot of show through, but not horrendous. If you're colouring, I mean, I did 5 covers with that. You wouldn't normally cover that many times with a metallic gel pen. No ghost on the writing, and yes, it completely blotted across here. So obviously going to need to let it dry if you're going to colour with it, but the writing didn't ghost, so that's fine. What else have we got? A bright pink. Oh, that's still got the lid on it. Let's use a different colour. Because the bright pink one I'll send to Courtney, because these are too thick for me. These are like, I don't know if they're 1 or 1.2 mil. They are really chunky. This is the Zebra Medium Z Grip Smooth. They're nice pens, but they're way too thick for my writing. Zebra Z Grip. I find them very difficult to write with because they're so chunky. Smooth, medium. Whoops, it's skipping. 1.2 mil. Let me try another colour just in case, because I've got the green one here that I use quite a lot. So let me put here skipping. And I didn't do a colour test, did I? I might as well do that as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And just for good measure, let me try the green one. That one's skipping too. Smooth. Oh, skipping a lot. I don't normally get skipping with these pens, but I don't usually use them very much either. So, jury's out on that. If you find that the Z grips skip for you too, then they're going to skip on here, I'm pretty sure. So, I think that's a good possibility that they are skipping. Let's do the bleed test. What's it like on the back? Perfect. Yep, same. Basically, everything you colour with is going to show through a very, very, very tiny bit. See? You can just about see it. So it's pretty much like the Leuchtturm, but absolutely no bleed. Except for the ones where it's got wet. 2 lots of wet means it bleeds. What else do we have? Let's try a distress marker. It's white, but we'll try it anyway. Just to see. Oh, that doesn't go down very well. That dried really fast. Oh, wow. That'll be good for highlights. No bleed. Regular highlighter. This is a Stabilo highlighter. Swan highlighter, you might know them as. Stabilo highlighter. Nothing fancy. Just a regular old Stabilo highlighter. Whoops, that's the wrong lid. So, let's try that. Regular marks, highlights. Oh, almost bled. I think if I'd gone over it one more time it would have started bleeding, but you wouldn't normally go over a highlight 5 times. That's a lot of ink to put down for a highlight. Whoops, sorry, wandered off the page. There we go. else do I have? Oh, Papermate. Papermate Flare Medium in Bright Pink. Papermate. Now these are not supposed to bleed on anything. So let's see. I think they will bleed. I'm pretty sure this colouring is going to bleed. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, total bleed. Fine on the writing. Bit of ghosting on the writing that we haven't seen on anything else. But yeah, the bleeding with the colour. So let's try a, what's this? Stabilo 0.88. Also pink, look. Stabilo 0.88. Fine 0.4. Colour 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going excess on the colour because you wouldn't normally colour in that heavily. You wouldn't normally colour a square with like 5 layers. So 5 layers is a good test. Pretty good. Shows through when you colour, but no show through on the writing. Teeny bit where I put the dot is showing through a bit more. So you might find if you put your pen down and left it on the page that would bleed through. And if you write slow, then that's something that will happen. Yeah, that will bleed through completely. So Stabilo bleeds if held to paper. So if you write really slowly with Stabilos to the point where you, I know a lot of people will like do a dot or a full stop and kind of pause there while they think about what they're going to do next. If that's a habit that you've got, you might not want to use Stabilos on this paper. What else have we got? No point trying a Sharpie. That is a alcohol-based pen that will bleed through anything but marker paper. So this is the Psy pen. It's the Akasaya, I think they're called. Psy pens. They're a bit like Zig Clean markers. There's not a lot of difference. So SAI watercolour pen. Now this doesn't lay down quite as much ink as the Tombow, so I wonder if this will behave a little bit better when colouring. So 1 layer, no show through. Quite a few layers, nowhere near as bad as the Tombow yet, but I haven't added water. So regular pen, add some water. Doesn't smear. So that's going to be an issue if you use these for colouring as watercolour pens. These don't, you can see the blue hasn't spread like it should. So that could be an issue. However, it doesn't look like they're bleeding as bad. That has started to bleed through now. So they don't bleed anywhere near as badly as the Tombows, but they don't watercolour either. So I think watercolour pens, wet to wet media, is going to be a bit of an issue in this book. Dry to wet seems to work, or just 1 layer of wet seems to work fine. Let me see, what else have I got? Oh, a souffle. So this is the Sakura. Whoa, Sakura. Oh, the stand-up. These are the souffle gels, the ones that dry embossed. The stand-up on this pen is very good. Sakura souffle gel. I can't write in these at all, they're too thick. Let's lay down a bit of colour. Now obviously that's going to take time to dry. They do take time to dry all the time. But absolutely no bleed through. So your Sakura gels, perfect. Let me try my age-old favourite, my Pilot G-Tech C4. Pilot G-Tech C4 0.3. Writes nice and smooth. These do have a tendency to scratch on unsmooth paper, especially like moleskins and stuff. They really pick up fibres from the paper. I'm not having that problem here. No bleed through, no ghosting. And something I like to do with these is to use them with water. So, and they're quite dry, so let me try them. Ah, now these all work as watercolour pens. Although the fineness of the nib does disturb the paper, you get a little bit of ghosting, a little bit of bubbling on the paper. But not too much, and it doesn't bleed through or anything, so that's pretty good. That's nice to know. Have I got anything else? Got a lot of random pens here. Where's my Uniball I Micro? This is another very popular pen. This is not the needlepoint version, this is the regular rollerball version. So Uniball I, sometimes needle, depends where you buy it, micro, and this is the 1mm. This is quite saturated, so I'm expecting some bleed from this one because it's very, very inky. It's meant to write like a fountain pen. Oh yeah, bleeds like crazy. Even the writing is ghosting, and at the very bottom of the writing where I was writing a little bit slower, that's bleeding. So yeah, sorry Uniball I, won't be using you. What else do we have? Oh, the Triplus, the good old Triplus Statler fine liner. Statler, Triplus fine liner. These don't tend to bleed, but it's putting down a lot of pen on the paper, so yeah, I don't know, it might do. 5 colours, and let's do a dot test like we did with the Stabilo. Ba, ba, ba. Ooh, I'm impressed. Very little bleed, even on the dot test, a tiny little bit of bleed. Tiny, 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 but not as bad as there's the Statler and there's the Stabilo. So not as bad as the Stabilo, sorry. You could colour with it, as long as you don't hold it down on the paper, you'd be alright. Let's try a Pitt brush pen. This is the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen in fine sepia. FC Pitt Art Pen F in sepia. This again is laying down a lot of ink. I think this will bleed, but maybe I'll be surprised. Who knows? It's a very wet pen, but Faber-Castell is a German brand, so you never know. Maybe it works with a German paper. Who knows? It does! Goodness me! No bleed. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Excellent. So German pens, German paper, that seems to work. What else? Oh, I better test my fountain pens, hadn't I? So I pens first. This is the Uniball I. So it's the same as this one, but it's the needlepoint version. So let's try this one. Uniball. Ooh, also very wet. I. Skipping. These don't normally skip. Needle. Oh, terrible bleeding. It's feathering and bleeding all over the place. Micro. Oh, really bad. Feathering is when you start writing and it starts, the pen starts going like that. Yeah, it's bad. We've got the whole kit and caboodle going on here. And this is the needle point. This is terrible. I'm only going to do 3 there because I'm pretty sure that's going to bleed regardless. Oh yeah. Bleeding, feathering, ghosting, all of it. No, sorry Uniball, you're not doing very well with this, are you? Sad face, because I like that pen, but it's better on cartridge paper. What else do we have? I got a Posca marker there, but it's a white one, so it's not going to show through. Oh, Posca marker in purple. Posca paint marker. Let's see what that does. Oh, this is a bit dry. It's drying up on me, but try it anyway. No problem. So paint markers, yes. What else have we got? Oh yeah, all of these. So Uniball. Oh, let's do blue for a change. I haven't done blue yet. Oh, I had Uni. Oh, this is slip sliding all over the place. Uni Jetstream. And I used to write with this on the Hobonichi paper, and I never had that. 0.38 millimeters. It's slipping. Oh dear. Uniball aren't performing very well on these. It isn't pilling up the paper though, like the Pilots did, so that's good. Dries instantly, so that's fine. No ghosting or bleeding. So if you don't mind the fact that it slip slides all over the place, then the Hobonichi pens, the Uniball Jetstreams, will be fine. Oh no, that needs to go in there. Let me try. This is Sumi ink, watered down Sumi ink, so this should be fine. Let's have a look. Yep, no problem. This is the I can't remember what it's called. I think it's the Kuretake version of the Pentel pocket brush. I've lost my Pentel pocket brush. I tidied up the other day and I put it away somewhere and don't know where it is, and I'm furious. But this is the same. It's the same ink. It's Sumi ink. So that should behave. Yep, absolutely fine. No problem with that. Something the Japanese know a lot about, inks and paper, and how not to have dark ink bleed on your paper. This is the Carbon Ink Platinum fountain pen. So platinum. Oh, horrible bleeding. Oh no. Feathering. Nastiness. Eek. Don't tell me this isn't going to be fountain pen friendly. Platinum, carbon, ink, and it's not fine. It's not coming out fine. It's blopping onto the paper. This doesn't normally happen. I love this pen. Oh, this is horrible. I'm disappointed. Carbon ink, super fine. This is nasty. We've got feathering. I'm not even going to do more than 2 coats with that. That's going to bleed. Yep, feathering, ghosting, bleeding, all of it. Nasty. Nasty, nasty. Let's try my Lamy with the carbon ink. That is working much better. So it's not the ink, it's the pen. Well, that's disappointing, because this is a really nice pen to draw with. And that's the extra fine nib. So it's not the ink, because it's got the same ink in both, it's the amount of ink coming out of the pen itself. Look at that ghosty, blotty nastiness compared to the carbon ink in the Lamy. Let's try it with another ink. I've got a Diamine ink in one of my other pens. I think this is full. I think this has got Diamine Crimson or Red Dragon. I'm not sure. This is my Jinhao Dragon pen. And this is the Diamine Red Dragon ink. Colour in with that. I think colouring with it is going to bleed. but it's not feathering. Which line is it? Yeah, bleeding if you colour with it, but regular writing, not bleeding. So, with your fountain pens, you're going to have to experiment with different pens and different inks. Because as I just showed you there, using the same ink in a completely different pen, one bleeds and one doesn't. That platinum carbon ink fountain pen should be a super fine, almost like this Uniball Jetstream line, and it's not. It's worse than the Lamy Carbon. This one, the Jinhao, writes very, very heavily and wet, but with the Diamine ink, it's not feathering or bleeding. It's fine. So, yeah, fountain pen users, you're going to have to experiment, because it always depends on both your pen and your ink. You can't say, oh, does a fountain pen work on this? You can't, because all fountain pens and all inks are different. I can't even guarantee that another Diamine ink in this pen would be okay, because Red Dragon Diamine ink and say Ultramarine is going to have completely different pigments in it. So it's a different type of ink. You can't say all Diamine inks are going to work on this. What else do I have? I've got magic pencils. Let's give those a little bit of a try. Just make sure they don't smear. These are the ones that have got 3 different colours in. Yep, no problem there. And let's try a regular old pencil. Actually, let's try a Colorase pencil first. So Colorase, which I can't spell, works fine. Doesn't erase that well, but to be honest, I'd never find that they erase that well. That's why I don't use them. And a regular old HB number 2 pencil, if I can find one. Come on, I must have a regular old pencil here somewhere. Here we go, that's a regular old pencil. What's this? Oh, it's a 2H, but it's still a normal graphite pencil. You could smudge it if you wanted to, which is good, because I do like to smudge my pencils a lot, especially the Palomino Blackwings. It's not too bad. Let me get my Blackwing. Let's try that one, because it's a much darker pencil. There's Blackwing. Oh, that's not going to smudge. So that's interesting, because that, I do like to work with this as a smudging pencil. It doesn't look like it's going to. But you can get nice and dark on it, as always with the Blackwings. Erases fine, as always. One thing I love about the Blackwings is that they erase pretty much anything from anywhere all the time. Let me try it with a silicone smudger. Now with the silicone smudger it works fine. So it does smudge with the silicone one. So that's good. I can still do my pencil blending and everything. See, that works fine. But with finger, it doesn't smudge. So that's good. I like that. That is perfect. So overall, I would say, where's my pen gone? Here it is. Overall results. I would say most pens are fine. Felt tip fine line 50-50. Some bleed, depends if you're heavy-handed. Fountain pens, try it, because it's going to be different for every pen and every ink and every combination. The gel pen is now dry. which is about right. Absolutely fine, it looks good, and it's raised. So what do we call them? Sakuras. Sakura jellies. Perfectly fine. Pencil. Good. Uniballs. No. Feathered. Watercolour pens. 25 out of 100. They're okay if you just want to colour with them, but if you want to get them wet again, that's going to be an issue. Watercolour paint. Absolutely fine. So there you go, that is the Nuuna notebook pen test that I normally do with everything. And the ugly bits are all hidden, as you can see, against the useless flap at the back. So that's fine. I will be able to use almost everything I normally use except for my uniballs. And I love my uniballs. I love my uniballs for sketching. However, I've got another book, my Alpha Series Stillman and Burn, which is the one that I'm going to do larger sketches, like dedicated sketching book. This is my journal, planner, omni journal, doodle book type stuff. For my actual proper sketches, I've got a proper sketchbook. So I may use my uniballs in that and just pop them all in a pencil case where I can just pick them out, because they perform beautifully on that paper, but not so much on this. So there you go. If you were looking for the Nuuna notebooks to see what they are like, there's your pen tests. I would say the zebras, skip. The Tombow markers are questionable depending on how much water you want to add to them. The Signos seem to work fine, but the needle points and needle point eyes uniballs not so much, and fountain pens questionable, depends what you're going to use. Staedtler and Stabilo fine liners, caution if you want to colour heavily with them, they're going to bleed. Hope that was fun for you to see how I pen test my new notebooks, and I can now go ahead and swap out my pens into my big pencil case here that I use, get rid of the ones that I know are not going to work on this paper and use them for other things around my desk, and stock up on the ones that I know are going to work. And this baby will be going into my Janelli Fish trifold later on today.